Hello, and welcome to another edition of Your Therapist Needs Therapy, the podcast where two mental health professionals get together and talk about their mental wellness journeys and talk about therapy in general. I'm your host, Jeremy Schumacher, licensed marriage and family therapist, and today I am joined by Greg Schoeneck, the owner of the Therapeutic Workshop. Greg, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
I'm excited to talk. I don't remember how I came across your stuff. I think maybe it was Instagram,
Yeah.
but kind of the tabletop stuff, and you do a lot of trauma work. So I think there's a lot of overlap in our work. I'm super jazzed to get together and talk today.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about any of it. Tabletop role-playing game, one of the cornerstones of kind of what I do. I do a little bit different type of trauma therapy. Um, and I do walk and talk nature therapy,
Yeah,
ecotherapy, so
yeah,
whatever. Yeah, it's got a lot of names.
everything right up my alley.
Yeah.
I always like to start, Greg, with kind of asking people, how'd you get into the mental health field? What was that journey like?
Man, it's been a convoluted road for me, a long road. Um, yeah, I think, well, it was an interest of mine. I was in therapy as a young person, as a child, even
Hmm.
family therapy, and then journey. Oh, as a teenager, been in therapy. Um, yeah, and so it's always kind of been in the back of my mind as something I thought was helpful. Um, it's really helped me in my journey of working with young people. Sometimes that's where I kind of cut my teeth as like being a new therapist working with justice involved young people.
Sure.
So I always have like a perspective of where I was at when I was a teen in therapy and what I thought of it when I work with young people.
Yeah.
And it really has kind of like informed a little bit of the way I like to work with people. Um, I'm really interested in bringing people into therapy, into a therapeutic relationship,
Hmm.
um, who might typically be scared, be resistant, not want to be in therapy, yeah, just all of those feelings, that come
Yeah.
about like therapy,
Right. That
like
that
therapy.
idea of like a clinical,
Yeah,
almost like a hospital sterile type
yeah,
setting.
yeah. How just daunting that can be,
Hmm.
especially for somebody who's never done it before. Um, I think our culture hasn't done a great job of portraying it and
Yeah.
like respecting it in some ways and valuing it. And so I think just finding safe ways for people to, talk to a therapist, talk to somebody,
Yeah.
and this is like a kind of passion of mine, which just kind of leads me into all these other branches of working with people, right?
Right.
So
So was that like a positive therapist from your past who had a good impact on you that like got you thinking about wanting to do therapy, or was it just kind of because you were aware of it as a profession and a thing that you had interacted with?
um gosh, so many different reasons. um I always tell this story about a woman when I was doing therapy with. I was made to go see this woman as a teenager in therapy,
Hmm.
and didn't want to be there. Didn't think I needed to be there. Um, she's a fantastic lady, and um, she changed my life, and she never knew it.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
for like from day one, I was the resistant client who didn't belong there, didn't want to be there. And there was one session, I won't share the details, but she like flipped my entire thinking as a young person, and it just
Hmm.
changed my life and changed the trajectory of my life in such a good way. Um, I don't think I ever went back. I think it was like my last session or shortly after. I never really, she never knew it. And so, when I supervise clinicians who are working with people like that, and I always keep in the back of my mind, you just never know
Hmm.
the impact you can make on somebody.
Yeah.
I'm sure she probably thought, well, there he goes, and I'll never see him again.
Right.
Um, and maybe I didn't do a good job, like maybe, gosh, I failed again. And no, she did, changed my life,
Hmm.
changed my thinking,
Yeah.
and so that was, that's something I hold in my heart, like
Hmm.
as an experience I had.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. But yeah, but then, other healing journeys, I really, I went to school initially. I have an art degree.
Hmm.
So art is close to my heart, and the healing journey for myself still kind of continues to be um, very therapeutic for me. So, um, I buy into things like art therapy
Yeah.
and role playing game therapy and nature therapy and all those things that we do alongside. I mean, I just think like I had such a healing journey on my own through my art experience. Like, how great would it have been to have somebody walking along, walking alongside with me,
Yeah.
during that journey? How much more profound and how
Sure.
much more impactful could it have been?
Yeah. Well, and different brains process information differently. So whether it's through
Yeah.
music or it's through art or it's through D&D or
Yeah.
whatever, like there are all these different ways to,
Yeah.
there are different pathways to get to the same place.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's a Western, like that Western idea of like what therapy should be,
Yeah.
what it has to be therapy, what our insurance companies say it has to be, to be therapy.
Yeah.
I question that firmly,
Right.
I
Yeah.
guess. And so yeah, so I'm walking that line. So I think it's a kind of a many passions involved in like how I like to work and why I'm here.
Yeah.
I didn't become an art therapist. Yeah, it was a thought in my head, but I never took
Sure.
that actual path.
So what was, I'm curious about, I think I know the answer, but I'd love to get into your story a little bit about like school and grad school and some of that stuff, because the things you're doing therapeutically now are not things that I was taught in grad school.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing, I'm curious how that journey kind of unfolded for you to go and get the schooling and the credentials, but then find something that kind of fit for how you would like to do your practice.
Yeah, it's been a journey. I don't know how people feel these days. I felt unprepared coming out of
So
out
you
of
knew how to
grad
do
school.
session 1 and 2, and that was it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Like the basics, right? Like I'm not gonna hurt anybody. I'm not gonna and so you go with that. Um and then I think, like the population I was working with when I first came out, these at-risk kids that are just have these trauma histories and
Mhm.
are so scared, can't connect with anybody. Why would they connect with me? Um, why would they trust me for a second with their story? Like trying to find ways to like connect with these young people
Mhm.
who aren't safe with anybody, have no reason to feel safe with anybody.
Yeah.
Just rack my brain, like I gotta find a way, and they don't teach you that,
Yeah.
like
Did you have any sort of education around trauma, like working with that at-risk population where trauma is probably pretty prevalent? Because I talked to a lot of therapists who work with trauma, myself included, and like we weren't prepared. It was all stuff we had to go and learn and be like, I keep seeing my clients have this stuff.
mm.
How can I help them better?
So I was super fortunate, and it was I ended up being kind of lucky. So the facility I ended up working with was a residential facility,
Hmm.
and they had just one of the managers had just come from I don't know if people are familiar, but now they're WellPoint, but they were St. Anne's. And
Sure.
so they have they use NMT, neuro sequential model of therapeutics, Dr. Bruce Perry, Oprah Winfrey, that whole thing.
Hmm.
And so he had come from that and really wanted us to be trauma informed like that. And
Yeah.
so he really was trying to spearhead that and like, I want our new therapist to learn this model and understand that. And so I took advantage of that. And
Yeah.
so I got trained as like a level 1 NMT um, therapist or whatever they call them.
Hmm.
So I really have a background of understanding developmental trauma
Hmm.
and 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 the and so it while that model values um, therapy in general, it really says like there are things we can do to help people feel safe so that
Hmm.
they can do these things, right? And so I've always come from a perspective of not everybody's ready for sit in the chair
Yeah.
therapy.
Right.
Not, they can't do it. Like they have to feel safe and have their um have parts of their brains organized in a way that can do that. And so
Hmm.
I did have that perspective. So I was always kind of looking for that
Sure.
within in that facility. Like, okay, well, how do I get these young people in a place where they can even think about doing therapy with me?
Hmm.
And that perspective was really helpful. It was like, let's do something together. Let's do things in parallel. Let's do things then we start doing things across from each other, and like
Yeah.
really just building up the capacity to have a relationship with somebody
Right.
that seems safe,
Yeah.
So that really gets your mind spinning, like, what can we do? What else can we do? What could be more powerful and what could be more helpful? Um, as a young therapist with my training license, um, I didn't have the voice that I have now,
Yeah.
the power, the confidence to say, like, to a system, like,
Right.
this is what you're teaching us. We need to, like, do these things.
Yeah.
So I have some regrets about, like, not being able
Well,
to speak up, not, you know,
you can chime in with your experience, but I think for me, I had good supervisors who gave me a lot of wiggle room, but it was also like you're at a low fee clinic. This was before everyone had the Affordable Care Act existed, so not everyone had insurance. Where I was interning, and it was like, what's your diagnosis? Like it was so formulaic in that medical model,
yeah,
where even though my supervisor would be like, take this kid for a walk around the compounds, like
yeah,
we were in an office park, like take him for a walk. If you think that's good, do
yeah,
that. Like if
yeah,
you want to grab a ball out of your car and play catch with them, like do that if you can
yeah,
do that. But like it was still couched, I think, in that medical model of make
yeah,
sure you're thinking of confidentiality, make sure you're thinking of your diagnosis and how are you doing your billable hours. And it was like
yeah,
it's so hard to, I think, be genuine and show up authentically when you're a young therapist and you're trying to balance all that stuff.
yeah. You're really trying to, and I don't know that you have the mind to do it. And if you're not working with people who have the mind to do it, like, how does that? I just had a talk with a young intern therapist yesterday or Monday or something. Yesterday? No, no. And I was talking about this of like, it's you're really trying to prove that you have this clinical knowledge, but
Mm-hmm.
it's so basic, that it can be hard to, like, keep all that in mind. Like, how am I looking at it this way? And even if you have people that are like, yeah, well, yeah, go ahead and do that, but you got to make sure you're, doing this and doing that and doing this, and it's really hard to dot those I's. And um, I think you get to a certain level and you say, like, me showing up authentically, this is how trauma heals in
Right.
relation.
Yeah.
Like, that is the
Yeah.
work, and at this point, that's all this person is capable of having somebody show up, be safe, be authentic, be predictable,
Mm-hmm.
and, like, and when that can happen, then maybe we can do some deeper trauma work. Then maybe we can do that. But that process is of value,
Yeah.
that I don't think gets valued
Yeah.
by people sometimes. It's like, well,
Yeah.
what are you doing? It's like, well, this is it. Like, for now, this is it. That's all we
Mm-hmm.
can do.
Yeah.
Um,
Everybody, I think, is aware that rapport and the relationship a client has with their therapist is the best indicator of an outcome, but like we don't spend a lot of time on how to actually do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I remember I went to a training. This was years ago, and I was working with kids, and the guy, and I don't remember I have no idea who it was, but they were like, the first thing I put in my treatment plan is create a therapeutic rapport with the young person I'm working with, and that is my goal right there. Is for us
Mm-hmm.
to just be able to be comfortable and feel safe with each other, and that is a goal, and it kind of blew my mind, and it's and I was like, oh yeah, that a very real goal that we're shooting for right off the bat, and nothing else really matters until you can do
Until,
that,
yeah, exactly.
right? And then so I moved from that. I went into working at outreach community health centers here. I was there for 6 years. Very underserved population. I mean, they used to be called healthcare for the homeless, so it's very underserved population. And I started up their youth and family program there. And I remember, like, even with that population of people who just have been re-traumatized and traumatized, and, like, and talking to, like, people who are just working with those adults and being like, maybe your first goal for this human being it should be just to have a relationship with them, just to build a trusting relationship with them. And how do you do that? How do you let them feel safe? Especially when you got people who have been traumatized by systems, and
Mm-hmm.
then they're coming into, like, this system, it's like, God, just being in this room with me is dysregulating.
Yeah.
Like, now
Right.
how do I make you feel safe in this unsafe environment with
Mm-hmm.
me, stranger, you know, doesn't look like you, doesn't have your experiences, like, there's
Yeah.
so much distance between us,
Yeah.
story wise. So yeah. And I would give that input to people during consultations, and they'd be like, oh yeah, like maybe can I do that? Like, is that okay? Like,
Right.
I'm like, I don't know, but you should do it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, no, and I think I relate. Like, I interned at a homeless shelter as well, and it was like one of those things where, as a young therapist, like you're trying to figure out how you're doing therapy. I joke about it now, but like I look back and like, man, I wasn't good at what I was doing.
Yeah,
I was like doing mindfulness work because I love DBT and all this stuff. Like
yeah,
working with people who are homeless. Like, does mindfulness help people? Yes. Is there research that backs that up? Is that what those clients needed? Absolutely not.
yeah,
And so it's like, yeah, it's that balancing act of learning how you do therapy as a therapist, but also like, right, this is a human being across from me. Like, what do they need right now?
yeah. What do they need right now? What are they capable of right now?
Hmm.
Like asking them to do, and then you get people who would like insist upon that. Right? Like, well, mindfulness helps. Just keep doing mindfulness, and it's like it's not helping me. It's making me feel less safe. I mean, I can't, and then you're like, doing even a double disservice, right? Like,
Hmm.
you're telling them that they can't even do the thing that other people do that
Yeah.
helps them, right? Oh my
Well, and I think,
gosh.
you've used this word a bunch. I think for me, once I got serious about learning about trauma, like my approach got so much more about safety. Safety
Yeah,
first and foremost. Like, does my client feel safe? Are they safe in this present moment? And like that does change how you approach therapy, how you're interacting with them. Because I think, I don't know, it's been a bit of a bugaboo for me where like we're doing a disservice to the next generation of therapists by not talking about trauma more.
yeah,
Because most of our clients have at least little t, if not big T trauma, like
yeah.
PTSD trauma.
I I couldn't agree more. And gosh, I cringe thinking about the training I got in my trauma training in college. Um,
Hmm.
I feel like it was a little. I I felt like I knew it wasn't enough when it was happening. Like I was like, this is not gonna help me.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, and so I was again, I'm very fortunate in like kind of where I ended up, kind of on my understanding of trauma,
Hmm.
that I gained from the place I worked at and the training I got. Gosh, I thought I was gonna say something, but I forgot now.
It's all right. My listeners are used to it because of my ADHD. Um, let's talk a little bit about the therapeutic workshop, going to a place of opening your own practice and really kind of being able to practice in that authentic way,
Yeah.
bringing all the different trainings, certifications you have as well. But like, what was that journey like to get into kind of private practice and landing in a space where you're doing your own thing?
Scary. Um, Not great at taking leaps of faith.
Sure.
I'm not great at it at all. It's part of my stuff. I like certainty, I like predictability,
Hmm.
and starting a business is anything but. Um, but it really became important for me. So I really started like at the end of COVID. Um, people were still kind of like doing virtual stuff for the most part. So I could kind of reach people virtually. And
Hmm.
then, like last year or this year opened up like the physical space where I was able to do a lot more.
Hmm.
Um, like it was cool because people responded to like wanting to do walk and talk therapy, wanting to be outside. And
Hmm.
it wasn't just COVID. It wasn't just people being scared of getting sick. It was like, no, I know I do better when I'm walking. I can't tell you how many people I talk to and they're like, yeah, I know that my supervisor used to take me for walks when when I was being supervised. I always remember those being like the best conversations.
Yeah.
Um, and people really respond to it. I think that's where it first started,
Hmm.
like walk and talk therapy. And I really wanted it to be like not, okay, we have to do this because COVID's here. And it's going to be like this ancillary thing that, like, as soon as we can get back in the office, let's get back
Sure.
in the office. I really wanted it, and it still is. Like, this is something that I know helps people. I know we talk about safety,
Hmm.
right? Um, being so important, and regulation being so important, and walking bilateral stimulation, the most natural bilateral stimulation, right? So
Yeah.
it's just built in feeling regulated when we're walking. I have people that go like, what if I'm out in public and I start crying?
Hmm.
And I just, I talk about something too painful and I start crying. And like I've had people like tear up when we're walking, but never cry because they're walking. They're still like regulated,
Right.
and they can talk about things that are incredibly painful, incredibly personal, incredibly deep, And I guarantee you, if they were sitting on the couch still, they'd be in tears. I'd be I'd be giving them Kleenexes,
Yeah.
and they'd be, there's nothing wrong with that. There's a
Right.
catharticness to that. That's okay. But it can like kind of like I feel like okay, now we're kind of I'm trying to get you back into regulation, right? I'm trying to connect with you and get you back safe where we can continue to talk and continue to kind of process this. Or maybe we gotta back off. This is too much and we gotta close it down. Where the walking, like we just keep going. Like they can get deeper, and if they need to calm down, there's resting space, right? I can look off at the trees, I can look off at the lake, and just walk a little bit and regulate myself. And you got somebody walking right next to you. It's just beautiful. And so again, like intentionality, bringing intentionality, knowing that I can use these things, knowing that I have all of nature at my disposal to just like to like pull from. I love it. I would do it every time. Now I don't think you can do like trauma healing necessarily. I haven't figured out a way to do that walking. Because I think that there is a level of needing somebody to be still and being kind of introspective and to that. At least the way that I do it. I haven't developed a way to do it moving.
Well, yeah, but I think that regulation and like I talk about a lot of the somatic work that I do with clients is geared towards like prepping us to do some of the trauma work, like so that you have the skills and the tools to connect with your body and work through some of the things. Because when you're doing trauma work, it's not just therapy is never just in the office, but like especially with trauma, like you get triggered on something or you're reminded by something or you have a flashback or whatever. Like if you're not able to regulate outside of the office, you're gonna have a bad time. So I think like setting up like going for a walk or like here are these skills, here are these tools, connecting with nature. I think that stuff is awesome. You dropped one of my favorite bilateral stimulation, and like for the couple of people who aren't therapists who listen, like again, that's the brain's ability to process information in a different way. You're getting your brain to communicate in a different way with itself, with ongoing internal stimulation and some of the stimuli coming from outside. So that can be very healing in and of itself, but it's a safe way for your brain to process perhaps threatening stimuli.
Which I've noticed. Like I said, I've not done like big T trauma stuff, but when we talk about like which in my view of how I see people, like I see emotional neglect constantly, and I see it as something that's very painful for people and damaging to relationships with themselves, relationships with other people, and that kind of stuff. I do feel like we can kind of talk about, and it's very painful, and people can get there when we're walking. And I think that can be really healing for them to kind of understand some of that stuff and kind of process some of that stuff. I think is, that complex trauma, that emotional neglect. I think those are deep wounds that like a lot of therapists don't really necessarily address. Like we get the big T stuff. And then we don't look at, if there was big T stuff, there was absolutely little T. There was absolutely neglect, right? Like
100%.
If somebody was impacted by a big trauma traumatically, somebody didn't do their job to help them and like come alongside them and help them with that. And there's the neglect piece. And I think that kind of gets overlooked sometimes in the healing we do and how impactful that can be for people.
Do you have a walking path near the office? I mean, kind of how did you get into like geography and location? You talk about the lake, so like paint us a picture. We're a podcast, so.
So I do two places right now. So when I first started, I was kind of like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like I was like, didn't know where I was going to get clients from. I was like, maybe I'll just come to you and do it there. As I've gotten busier, I've really like parsed it down to two places. So I do by the lake, which is very cold right now and beautiful. Like this is a really double-edged sword because like it's beautiful to look at like the cold icy water smashing on the rocks. So I'm in Bayview, that's South Shore Park area. We walk along the lake, and it's beautiful. A little rough right now. Otherwise, I'm just in local park, Humboldt Park in Bayview. That's a nice park. It's quiet, it's safe, it's easy. And so it lets me kind of, and my office is in Bayview, so it's an easy kind of trip between those places. yeah, I just picked what was close, and
Yeah.
it didn't have to be anything, super spectacular or special. I think nature's available in a lot of places, and sometimes it's, like I haven't done this, because haven't had to. But I think even if you're not near a park and you're going outside the office, like one of the things like is really nice is to draw people's attention to where nature is
Hmm.
in any landscape, to connect to it,
Yeah.
because some places don't have as much or don't,
Yeah.
and people's homes don't have as much. So like, how do I help you find those spaces for you to connect with nature, even when it's maybe a little sparse, but
Yeah.
it's still there?
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know?
And I think I grew up in Milwaukee, so I'm a native, but it's one of those things where, yeah, depending where you're at, if you're in an apartment complex, like
Yeah.
it can be very concrete and it can be very kind of not natural.
Yeah.
And so finding those spaces or cultivating those spaces, I think is great. As somebody who's neurodivergent, like for my ADHD, like walk and talk is great. Like nothing is more stimulating than being outside.
Yeah.
And so the sound of the air, the cars, like I don't mind the city sounds, but like
Yeah.
nature, like the breeze on your face, like all
Yeah.
that's so stimulating. Going
Yeah.
down by the lake is like for my brain just lights up
Yeah.
because water's always in motion. My
Yeah.
brain likes that. So
Yeah.
those things are regulating, but also I think for neurodivergent people, like it's stimulating in a way that can actually self-soothe as well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I always kind of like put it out there for people who are coming in, like, this is a really good for someone who's neurodivergent. There's just so many places to kind of grab interest, but in
Hmm.
a gentle way.
Right.
That's what I like about it. It's kind of like a gentle way. Like, and, early on, I've worked with people with neurodivergence and like, things that might, it's like like they're not paying attention to me or they're not like listening to me because they're looking at this thing or playing with this thing. That's something that's been out of my mind from day one, is like I know that neurodivergent people are totally able to focus on what I'm saying
Right.
and like even play a video game. Like, and I'm super down with that. Like, if you need to play a video game next to me to like interact with me because we
Yeah.
need to be sideways because right at me is tough,
Hmm.
I know you can do it. I
Yeah.
know that you can do it.
Mm.
And I think nature's just a really gentle,
Yeah.
way for people to rest and people to kind of like get that stimulation without, you know, I think a video game can sometimes suck people, suck
Yeah.
people in, but nature doesn't do that,
Right. Yeah.
typically,
Yeah. I think in like a grounding sort of way.
Yeah.
There's a nature pun in there somewhere, but like connecting to, literally the ground beneath your feet. And
Yeah.
I think there's concrete and that is feels kind of foreign, but like being in sand or being on the grass or whatever, like those things are very soothing. Our brains are designed to respond to those things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice. Yeah. It's a big part of the practice that I wanted to do.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, and it's where it started because the role playing game stuff has always kind of been another cornerstone. Like, I know I want to do this. I know this can be helpful. I know this is gonna be helpful for a lot of people that might not get the kind of help they need.
Yeah.
Um, but COVID was tough, and so they came up with all these new ways to play games online.
Yeah.
Like Roll20, and there's a few other ones, but Roll20 seems to be the kind of big one. And
Hmm.
so, but it's tough. It's a lot of work. Like doing a role playing game, doing a therapy role playing game, and then having to do it online. Ugh, it's a lot of work. So I kind of like pulled back on that idea as things were
Yeah.
kind of clearing up, and like I was looking to where I'm going to get a space. I kind of stopped offering that stuff, which for better or worse, it's just a lot of work.
Yeah.
Being in person is better. So I'm really excited about that. Um, and then I lucked out and connected with a local university who was looking to like do some work for their students, and
Hmm.
they have like a big role playing game population, and so I was able to use their space and come on the campus and run some games for them.
Sure.
So that was really nice. So those are kind of like the two things I really wanted to do with this practice,
Yeah.
So
I,
I'm fortunate.
I've had another ecotherapist on before, but you're my first tabletop therapy. So, like, what was that like? Kind of, I'm assuming it was an interest for you personally, but how'd you
Yeah.
kind of tie in the therapeutic approach? I was on your website. I know you're certified in doing this stuff. So, like, it's not just, oh, I like D&D, let's call it therapy. Like, what was the journey to link something that was a passion for you into, like, how do I do this therapeutically?
Yeah. So I think I always need me. I can think back to when like I started and was in this residential place and was like, man, how great would it be if I could get these kids to play a game of D&D with me? I could do all this stuff and my brain's just like firing off on why it could be good.
Mm-hmm.
But not having the language, I mean, within an MT, it definitely would make sense. But not having the ability to communicate that confidently kind of kept me from doing that. Um, there's definitely like within an MT, like playing games in general can be very therapeutic, right? We're building a relationship, we're building
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of skills there. Um, so I was able to sell that a little bit, but like getting a D&D game together, it's a commitment, you know,
Yeah.
like these it's just a big commitment. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you're not doing a 3 hour group, you're not playing D&D, you're not playing a role playing game, right? So like, and
Yeah.
then within that, you have to like infuse therapy into it. So it's a tough, and I don't know that I definitely didn't have like the clinical knowledge and the confidence
Mm-hmm.
to like pull that off. And so, but I knew like heart of hearts, like, yeah, this could be really good. And I think in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so at some point I started seeking out like, well, there are other people. Are people doing this? Like, are people doing this? And sure enough, like there's books,
Mm-hmm.
a few,
Yeah.
and some of them are very new. Like it's not. I don't think it's cutting edge, but it's also like pretty new. And yeah, there's two places that are doing like certifications for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I I only did one. I didn't feel like I needed to do two.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for me it was really like what are other people doing? What is their kind of idea of how this works? Was really important for me to just wrap my mind around, even though I don't necessarily think that I'm necessarily doing it exactly how they would do it. And a lot of these places are pretty kind of broad about like how you can use this.
Sure.
And for me, even in my therapy, I don't necessarily like uncertainty. I kind of like to know what I'm shooting for and like how I'm going to do that. I'm very intentional in
Mm-hmm.
like, and so even going back to like creating a therapeutic relationship, I really want to be intentional with that. Like that is an intent for me. Like
Yeah.
I need us to be able to do this. So anyway, so like I really wanted to, valued the training. A lot of them are like the one I took at least was very like set like you're a therapist who wants to do tabletop role playing game therapy, but you don't know what D&D is.
Sure.
So it really pulls back a perspective of like we're going to teach you how to rules to play like what is role playing game. So
Yeah.
a lot of it was a little just odd for me. I didn't really need a lot of that,
Yeah.
but there were some really cool things, that I didn't even think about like history of D&D and where it comes from and how problematic that could be for different cultures and different, like it's kind of, it's made here in Milwaukee, in Lake Geneva. It's close by. I mean, we're like the home of D&D,
Yeah.
but I mean, it has a problematic history, and so it was nice to like have somebody like draw all the things out for me. Like I'm like old school, learned how to play first edition Dungeons and Dragons.
Sure.
Um, and yes, it was absolutely some problematic things with it, and continue to be some. Well, I don't know. They're working on it, but like through many versions of it, continue
Mm-hmm.
to be some problematic stuff. Um, and so it was nice to like kind of hear that and understand that. Just have it brought to light,
Yeah.
so that we're addressing that at least.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good. And yeah, it was a good training. It gave me a good like foundation to kind of start like how do I do this now?
Yeah.
How do I make this my own?
Yeah.
Um, and then work it from like the perspectives that I like to work with people from.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's not just D&D. You're using other role-playing games.
Yeah, I kind of like D&D seems to be hot right now, and people are kind of like interested in it. Like, well, I never played D&D.
Do
I'd
you
love
think
to learn to
that's
play D&D.
because of Stranger Things, or is there some other? Well, there was the D&D movie as well, but I
Yeah,
I feel like that was
Stranger Things was a thing, right?
Stranger Things.
And I think people who were like, I remember like those nerds that were in high school used to play D&D, and I never got to play D&D. And so like I get like people are like, I never did it, but I kind of think I would be into it as happening right now. And I say nerds lovingly because I was one of those people who played D&D all my life. So and I think it's just enjoying like a little bit of a resurgence, and they made it a little less I don't know, crunchy for numbers and things like that. So I think it's a little more accessible for people. I'll also say it's not my favorite game for like therapy. I think there are other games that are built more and can be used for other things. So I really try to like explore that too of like what's a better game for like this kind of thing. Is it really D&D, or is it this other game that might have a more natural system? Like there are some systems that I think like your characters grow more like we grow.
Sure.
D&D's, people are familiar with D&D. It's real chunky kind of growth model that isn't natural, I guess, if you ask me. But yeah. And I guess it depends what you're doing with it. I think there's definitely value in doing it, and if it brings people in the door, that's what I would go with. That's why I do it. Right?
Yeah. And so you do that now with groups for like I think you're offering a men's group.
Yeah.
With a tabletop role playing.
Yeah.
So are you finding a lot of value with offering it as a group, or is there some value in like taking clients who you're working with and saying, hey, also like we've got this thing going on Thursday nights, you can come and play this game with us? Like, is it do you do both of those things, or is it kind of, here's a campaign, you got to start from the beginning, and we're going to do it for 8 weeks?
They are closed groups. I go 10 weeks.
Okay.
So that's kind of the way I've been modeling them is 10 weeks. And it really depends. Like, so, I kind of built like a social anxiety one, which was definitely more like social skills or skill-based, where it's more psychoed.
Sure.
We're going to teach them skills. I'm going to manipulate the game to make you use those skills within the game and reward you for using those skills within the game.
Yeah.
And so a lot more teaching and involved in something like that. So then I also run like social skills games where maybe we teach some social skills, but it's a lot more like these are kind of your personal goals, and I'm going to manipulate the game to make sure that you have opportunity to practice and learn those things. And so it's a little more, I think, free flowing of like how that's going to work. And when you do those things, I will also reward you in game. And I think there's a really like I was just talking to somebody about this, like, we all want we do this in every meeting prep we have with our clients is we're going to teach you some skills, we're going to practice them here, and then I'm really going to really hope that you are able to do that out in the world with other people. And when you do that, and seriously, my second hope is when you do that, you will receive feedback that is good and positive so that you will do that again.
Yeah.
We really have no control of any of that, right? Like, we've got a lot of hope. We hope that we've convinced or motivated our client enough that they're going to do that. They're going to try to have faith in us that this thing is going to make their life easier or better, right?
Yeah.
But it's really interesting, right? So in game, we can have a skill. I can have you practice it here with me as a non-player character, and I can give you the exact reaction that I want the person in your life to have. So you get that like positive feedback right away, or you practice it on another group member or another group member's character, which is even pretty cool. And you hopefully get the feedback that you're looking for too. But even then I get to see it, and I get to kind of coach it. I get to like kind of manipulate it.
Yeah.
Then I got a second layer because I can reward you in game. I can give you a cookie in game that your character gets this thing for doing that.
Right.
All these like positive reinforcements that like say like, oh yeah, that was a good thing. My nervous system goes, that was a good thing. Got a lot of rewards for when I practiced that thing.
Yeah.
And we have some control in it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And aside from that, it's a little safer, right? Because a lot of times I'm not asking you, Jeremy, to use this skill. I'm asking Jeremy's character, Tim, to use this skill, right? So, there's less skin in the game.
And I was thinking too, I mean, what was I watching? I'm rewatching Arrested Development. I'm dating myself with my cultural references. But there's like a really terrible therapy skit because most media portrayals of therapy, but like
Yes.
they're role playing in therapy, and I'm just like, I don't think I've ever like just made up a role play in not tabletop gaming, just a straight role play. Like you
Yeah.
play your character and I'll be this person and practice talking to your boss. And like
Yeah.
I do versions of that, but very
Yeah.
rarely do I do like a janky
Yeah.
pretend to be your wife and I'll talk like I don't that's never a skill that I've used in therapy. I don't think it's
Yeah.
helpful. And so as you're talking, I'm just thinking like, yeah, what a much more natural and organic way to be able to kind of distance yourself from yourself, but
Yeah.
still practice that skill in a
Yeah.
safe way.
Yeah. And get a bonus,
Mm-hmm.
right? Our brains are just like wired for cookies and like what, we got something good from that. So like
Yeah.
let's do that again.
Yeah.
So whether it's an imaginary experience point or an imaginary skill or an imaginary
Yeah.
inspiration point, it's in my brain. It's a
Right.
reward.
Your brain doesn't care that it's imaginary or
Yeah.
arbitrary. Your brain lights up.
Absolutely not. And
Yeah.
so it's wiring itself to take that path again.
Yeah.
Wiring itself to take that path again. And I get to do it right here
Yeah.
instead of hoping.
Yeah.
You're gonna take that home and do that. And so, like while I can bend that in different directions, like social skills seems to be like the easiest one to do it
Mm-hmm.
to. And you're gonna, if you research like tabletop role playing game therapy, that's like the one that's out there,
Yeah.
taking this into other arenas. I think people are doing it, but it's a little less like there's a little less about it,
Yeah.
So, I feel like I'm kind of building out some of the stuff for that.
Yeah.
But that's cool. But it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's been pretty successful. The other thing that happens is people show up, like I run a when I was at the university, I ran this 5 people group, 10 weeks, 2.5 hour group.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big chunk of commitment time for a college student.
Mm-hmm.
I had one person not show up because they had like a school trip like thing they had to do and go out
Sure.
of town.
Yeah.
And one person had COVID. Missed 2 sessions.
Mm-hmm.
2 people. Like it's unheard of in like group work. Like
Right.
that's the thing about groups.
Yeah.
People don't show up. So it doesn't matter how cool you think you are
Mm-hmm.
or what your valuable skill you're teaching. If these people don't show up, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and again, this isn't like I say this and I feel like, well, this isn't the answer for everybody. And that's really what I say about everything, having all these options is really what I think it's all about, is having different ways that speak to different individuals,
Yeah.
This speaks to a certain group of people. And I really want to expand. Like I really want to do more like nature groups and things like that too. And,
Mm-hmm.
and just really expand. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of like this dichotomous, like, I don't really want to bring like art because I love art into my practice too.
Mm-hmm.
But all these things I just think are just, we got to tap into what people are into.
Yeah.
That thing that they connect with. And then alongside it, we can do so much work, we can leverage that.
Yes.
Even, I talk about the idea of like geek therapy, of like your fandom and like how it's one thing I put in my intake is like, what are the things you're into? What are the things you like? Because if I like that thing or I know about that thing, I can leverage that. If you like Batman, I can talk about Batman all day and like all of the things that he deals with and doesn't deal with right. Like there's so much information, like you like Disney, let's talk about Disney. You like MCU, let's talk about that because all these stories, if we're super into them, they just I feel like our brains are just kind of like wired to like go, oh, I get it. Like, yeah, you're right. That does feel like that. So
I remember this is the way we learned from our clients. I was still I had to have been in grad school. I don't even think I was in my postgrad yet, but I was talking to a client about role models, like expecting like a teacher or a coach or an uncle or whatever. Like, honestly, Captain America. And like I'm enough of a nerd where it's like, cool, let's talk about why is Captain America here? And like we ran with it, but like it just like such a important thing in my career to learn, like, right, like let go of the preconceived notion and like let your clients kind of dictate these are the things that are meaningful to them. If it's Captain America and that's who is their best role model, then let's go with that.
What are his shortcomings and what are his blind spots and what are his benefits? Like there's so much to work with there. I can't tell you how many times I say my kids are super into Bluey these days, and like
Sure.
I keep saying, like, Bluey, Bandit is like my model of the dad I want to be. Like I
Yeah.
keep going, like, God, why can't I do that? Like I
Yeah.
need to be like that.
Did you go see Bluey this weekend? It was in town.
I wish I could be able to do things like that. I can't. Yeah. My kids aren't that old yet, where they'll sit for something.
Sure. I have a 5 and almost 3-year-old, so we went
Okay.
and
Well, you got it. Yeah, 5.
yeah,
That's what I'm thinking. 5.
yeah. It was good. I don't know that they're ready for like a movie or a live concert or like I'm into pro wrestling, so they're not ready for
Yeah.
wrestling. But like Bluey was like good. Yeah,
That was
good.
okay.
Yeah,
I know. I adore the 15-minute episode or whatever they are. They're just enough for him
yeah.
right now. So
But yeah, like those characters and what are they doing? Daniel Tiger for those parents out there
yeah,
now, like there's really not great kid shows, and Bluey and Daniel Tiger are kind of gold star
yeah,
recommends.
yeah,
But like, yeah, what would that character do in this situation? Like,
yeah,
that's great modeling. It doesn't need to be a real life person who did that
yeah,
modeling.
yeah. It's just yeah. I think shying away from that stuff, and then I think it's sad when people have to hide that. I was just talking to someone who's a Doctor Who fan, and she said she like approached her therapist and said, are you a Doctor Who fan? Because there's this thing I want to talk about that's like from this episode, and like
Yeah,
she lucked out. Like this person was like a Doctor Who person,
yeah,
and was able to have that connection. But I think it took a lot of. I told her I think I take a lot of bravery
hmm
for you to like step out and be like and have a little faith that this person wasn't gonna like judge you for that. Because I feel like a lot of our clients feel like they're gonna be judged for like playing video games or
right,
watching Disney movies or cosplaying or playing
right.
D&D, right? It's like I think for so many years that stuff has been like almost pathologized. Like, oh, you're an
hmm
adult.
Why are you playing video
Why are you
games?
playing video games? So
Right.
like this, let's talk about this and why this is obviously why you are here to see me. You need
Right.
to stop playing video games as an adult, right?
Yeah.
Um, or you're obsessed with Doctor Who,
Right.
like, and I think our profession has done that to a lot of people, and fortunately, they're not able to be authentic then,
Yeah.
and
Right.
so how are we gonna, even on that level, like, if they don't feel safe disclosing like
hmm
things that make them feel good, um, how are we gonna help them? I don't
And
know.
and there's so much like meaning making in those
Yeah.
things
It's
that
opportunity,
yeah,
right? Like it's just not only are they hiding it, but it's opportunity for us to use. And if we're just
yeah.
closed off to it and like,
hmm
um, it's sad.
Yeah, I had a
It's
client who was kind of closed off from their emotions, and we got talking about music, and I remember like he just started crying, talking about the album art of a Bob Dylan album,
yeah,
and it was like there's our in,
yeah,
like that's how,
yeah,
and being able to connect on that, and I think right, not there's no correct way to
yeah,
do that. If this thing is meaningful to you, whether it's superheroes or it's Disney or it's music,
yeah,
like hey, yeah, let's talk
yeah.
about that.
Let's find the way in.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, it's really kind of like something I'm kind of passionate on as I like look for people reaching out to me to try and like be a part of the therapeutic workshop and
hmm
really kind of like, what could you bring? Like
Yeah.
what's your cool thing
Right. Yeah.
that you could bring? Um, because there are a lot of great therapists out there who do talk therapy, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
God bless.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I really, I think they're just I really want to reach a population that might not come into therapy.
hmm
Um, and make that feel safe for them. However I can do that, whatever ways I can use my imagination and steal ideas from, from other people to do that too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do because I I just think there's a crisis out there. I mean, it's why the next group I did was the men's group, because I
hmm
think that that's just this population that is. I think there's a crisis in men's mental health. Like,
hmm
I don't know if people would disagree with me or completely agree with me, but like, just there are just men not getting the help they need, and there's too much like stigma
Yeah.
around getting help.
hmm
And so, you know, we're doing this World of Darkness Hunter group. We're going to talk about like protecting mental health,
hmm
men's issues, relational health, um, And I think it's going to be really helpful to bring people in and get that discussion going and get some support from other men. Men are so bad
Yeah.
at getting
Yeah.
support from other men.
And that's awesome with the gaming aspect of it, but like that's where group is powerful. Like I do
Yeah,
religious trauma, and like hearing other people's story,
yeah,
validating your experience, like you're not the only person who thinks this or feels this way, like that's
yeah,
so powerful.
yeah, yeah. And I think for some men who might be, just a having a hard time going to therapy,
Mhm.
like going to game night on,
Yeah,
being able to say, well, I got my gaming group on, Tuesday night or
right,
something.
exactly.
As I think it's just a safe way to like talk about it and feel safe and like, yeah, I'm just gonna hang out with these guys and we play a game and that's it. Like
Yeah,
so this is the first time I've done it. I'm really curious to see how it ends. If they want to, if the same group wants to continue and do more, because like I said, I
sure.
do it in like 10-week chunks.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to see if they want to keep going. Like, because I used to run men's recovery groups,
Hmm.
in a former life, and we used helping men recover material. And people aren't familiar with that. I think it's beautiful material. And it really helps men like kind of connect and talk and share
Hmm.
and I just saw some beautiful relationships of men like connecting with men and just like feeling like they could have conversations that
Yeah.
they've never probably felt safe having conversations with maybe
Yeah.
anybody, but certainly not another man. And I think so much growth was possible. I'm really hoping to
Yeah.
get some of get some of that
Well, and
aspect
I think
too.
it builds social support. Again, it's one of the ways where I think therapy gets in its own way, where like, oh, our clients can't know our other clients, or
Yeah,
like everything needs to be confidential. We need to protect it, and like it almost makes therapy its own taboo thing. And it's
yeah,
like, no, like if this person has a story that relates, and you want to meet up with them and play a game, like
yeah,
awesome, do that.
yeah,
That's so good for you. That's social
yeah.
support.
Yep. I'm totally down with that too.
Hmm.
Like, and it's one of the things I want to talk about, like with them, is like, like connect with each other, get support, like talk about this game, talk about your problems, talk about whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Um, Between the weeks, like do that, connect
Right.
with each other. You need support, and men are so bad at that in general.
Hmm.
But you're right, like the stigma around mental health and like privacy. It's why I like the walking therapy, right? I tell people, man, I really hope you get to the point where if somebody does see you walking with me and we say hi and just kind of walk by people, but like
Yeah.
I hope you get to the point where you're like, oh no, this is my walking therapy session with my therapist. That's who that
Yeah.
was. I hope you get comfortable saying with that because I don't want you to be ashamed of it. You wouldn't be ashamed if you said, oh, that was my trainer and
Right.
I went to the gym
Hmm.
and we were like running up and down the street because he's a CrossFit guy or whatever, right? You
Right.
wouldn't be ashamed of that. Like it
Right.
should be the same thing. This is your mental health you're taking care of.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
like please be proud. I think you'd be proud of it.
Yeah.
Honestly, like be proud of you taking care of yourself for crying out loud.
Yeah, we talked a little bit before I hit record, like that some of this stuff is a little bit more prevalent on the East and West Coast. Like the Midwest is still trying to catch up. I think coast, it's weird if you don't have a therapist. And we're still a little bit in the like, I'm not sure if I should share I'm in therapy.
Yeah, it's strange. Like I've had a number of people like coming into the practice who are like, yeah, I just moved from California. I moved from one of the coasts, and I'm just for this reason or that reason,
Yeah.
and I'm just looking to have a therapist here. Like not necessarily like because I'm this or that or this, but just like I just really want a
Yeah.
person.
Hmm.
Like I have a person out there, now I need a person here because I moved. And so I think you're right. Like there's just a whole different like, you know, way of talking about that. Like I think, in those areas it's just like, well, my therapist tells me. Like, it's like a kind of a common
Right. Yeah.
thing that people say.
Yeah.
And we're just not there yet. I think there are people.
Working on it.
We are, right? I mean, that's all we can do,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think closed doors and things like this are great, right? Because people
Mhm.
can hear and people can hear what a therapist is. It's like honestly, like I've been kicking around the idea of like trying to do like a hire a art therapist to do just like a community art group in the evenings, like
Yeah.
free. I'll pay for the therapist. I don't care, just to bring people in
Right.
and have a conversation with a therapist, and I can be there and just like either,
Yeah.
like so people could talk to me if they wanted to. I really wanted to do even like I haven't done yet is like a gaming night, like just let people come in, play games, find some like safe dungeon masters, and just like let people come in and play, and like therapists can be there, and like you can talk to them like you're a human being, and like you know, I don't know. There's so much stigma, right? That you're just trying to like get around like.
I talk about it. I keep kicking around this idea of how to do like a mental health holiday because I work with so many clients. My background's marriage and family therapy, and then I do religious trauma, and like so many people who aren't seeing their family of origins, or their family of origin isn't safe or whatever. I'm like, man, and like get in the way of like, oh, confidentiality, or how would I do this? Do they need to sign releases? It's like, why can't I just say like, here, come, and we're gonna have a meal, and so you can meet people, and it's great, it's good for you, and like, let's do that.
Yeah, and it'll be okay. Better talk to your lawyer.
I know. I haven't done it yet because I don't have the answer. But like, yes, I think that some of that stuff it's
scary.
Yeah.
You know, it is scary. You know, your license is on the line, and it's hard. Breaking down those walls is really hard. I don't really know. I don't have a great answer for it, but we, just keep chipping away.
Those of us, yes, in the field. Well, and I think that there's enough people where like, we're trying to figure out. I think COVID forced so many people to shift to telehealth, and I don't think telehealth is the answer, but like, for some people, it's a good option. For some people, like religious trauma is enough of a niche thing where like, I think I'm the only person in the state who does it, certified anyway, and like, right, there are people from all over the state who want to work with me. They're not driving 3 or 4 hours to see me. We're just gonna get on the computer and talk. And like, so again, I think we're expanding some of these things. COVID was nice. I was working in higher ed at the time, and like just got rid of all the state line restrictions because all these kids went home. They're not all from the state. And so like, how do supposed to go and see a therapist at their hometown? Like, no, they're going to keep working with me. Some of those restrictions came back. But like, again, I think reevaluating some of these. Who are we helping? Like the insurance companies, they don't need more help.
Right. Right. What are we really serving?
So no, I think these are good, and I try and highlight somebody on who does equine therapy, and like just different ways to help people and reach them where they're at.
Yeah. I think that stuff is beautiful. Okay, all for it.
Greg, this has been fantastic. If people want to learn about some of the groups, or they want to learn more about the practice, where do they find you? Where do they go to connect and learn more?
Yeah, the easiest thing to do is go to the website. It's just therapeuticworkshop.com. You can fill out the contact information there. You can, read more about me and the couple therapists that I work with. What we do. We're trying to come up with new ideas all the time, and none of the groups are really set. So we kind of build them as we want. I think this summer I'm going to try and run either social anxiety or social skills, which I think can blend nicely for teens in the summer, so that just between the semesters, so teens could come in and do some. I don't know if it's going to be D&D and playing around with maybe Fallout as a system. So we'll see. Maybe some sci-fi instead of some fantasy. So we'll see. So so there's a contact there, a contact button. So just feel free to fill that out. If you have questions, I will get back to you.
Very cool. And we'll have all those links in the show notes so that stuff is easy to find. One last question I want to wrap up with, because I'm a nerd. What are the under the radar games that you recommend to people?
Oh man, so many games I love. Like role-playing games. I am a big fan of Avatar. I think it's a really good system and a super cool show. The Last Airbender, not the blue people. For those of you, I'll distinguish. World of Darkness I think is a cool system. I don't know if it's underrated, but like Avatar is cool from, I think it's Magpie Games. And what's super cool is I'll give a shout out to Coyote and Crow, which is a super cool game. So cool. I forget what the company is made, but it's all about like, what if there was no colonization? What would the Americas look like?
Sure.
It's a very cool, very intriguing system that I have been trying to think about how I could utilize and help some other populations with. So having some contact or some meetings with. So that's a really cool game. Coyote and Crow, Coyote and Crow, and yeah, the Avatar game is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Also, I haven't really got into it, but there's this game called Midnight World by this really under the radar company that like deals with like trauma in a certain way, and I really want to see like what I could do with it.
Sure.
Yeah, those are my three.
Yeah.
And I've barely touched the surface on them, so
It's a good time in some of the nerd spaces
yeah,
for gaming and all that stuff.
so much cool stuff out there right now. So much cool stuff out there right now. I don't have enough time. I have small children.
Yeah. So I went to the board game convention last year when I was in town, and I picked up Batman the Animated Series, the board game.
Yeah.
And I have unboxed it and not even made it through the rule book yet. It's just sitting there for when my boys are a little bit older. We'll get into it.
You know what you should play? I'm gonna give a shout out to this game. Have you played Story Wars?
Mm-mm.
Check out Story Wars.
Story Wars.
I think your 5-year-old will be into it. My 4-year-old is like I think almost there.
Sure.
But it's like this super cool, easy game. Like that really much comes down to like when you have a like I am Captain America and you are Spider-Man and you tell me that you're gonna web me, but I say I'm gonna shoot my shield at you and knock your webs away and I'm gonna check your webs with my, but it's all just imaginative play. It's so good. And they have like a monster one and they have a superhero one deck, and I just can't wait to play it with my with my son. He's got such an imagination and I think he's gonna love it. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. I keep talking about like homebrewing a D&D campaign for the little neighborhood kids with it's like I don't know if they're ready for it yet. So finding that space for kids, and you're not playing Monopoly or Hi-Ho Terrio or some of those standard kids games.
I haven't played it personally yet. I have it in my Amazon cart, but No Thank You Evil. Have you checked that out?
I have not. We do a lot of 5 Minute Marvel and dice-based games because my kid likes counting because he's big on counting right now. He does his own edition, so he's very happy about those things.
On. Yeah, check out No Thank You Evil. It's Monty Cook's.
Okay.
The like Pathfinder D&D guy. So yeah, but it looks really cool and very simple. Like it's like a 2 6-siders or something like that.
Yeah.
And like has some like system to help each other, like get through, like you can help your friend, and it seems pretty simple and cool. My son's not there yet, but 5-year-old might be there yet. I don't know.
And I think, for teens and even adults, like there's so much good stuff in the gaming world, and kind of connect it to mental health is fantastic.
There's it's so much out there. I'm excited to see what else we can come up with and how we can apply it and help people and get people. I look at it as like we're either going to get people in the door, or the people we're working with, we're going to give them that extra support. Because I really do. Individual's great, but like that group work kind of like takes it to this connective level that you just can't do in individual work.
For sure.
So many people are just lonely. And like you can't. You need to connect with people to fix lonely. So
I always tell people it's one of the hardest things I work with is still like adults making new connection.
For sure. It's just hard. It's hard, and like you can kind of throw it out there all you want. Like I suggest you do this and suggest you do that, but it's really tough to get people to make that first call to like sign up for something and do something that feels safe. And so it's really kind of nice that you can have a bunch of clients, that all feel safe with me, kind of meet and hopefully make some connections in a safe way. I'm excited for it. So,
Well, we will have links to all that stuff, and check out the Therapeutic Workshop, and check back often for new stuff you might run over the summer and all that stuff. It's very cool stuff. Greg, thanks so much for coming on today.
Happy to chat. It was a good time.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
To all the wonderful listeners out there, thanks for tuning in again. We'll be back next week with another new episode.